Welcome. Today we're going to cover how to debug in VSCode using various interpreters in different languages. Let's start with an easy one in Python using Anaconda. So we're going to first open up our Anaconda prompt. I have Miniconda installed. You need to cd to your directory that contains the code you want to debug. In my case, it's a C directory, dev, this Strava animation folder. Now if you have Visual Studio Code installed, you can type code and hit dot to open up in that current directory. And it'll open from that directory. So if we go to Explorer, dev, into Strava animation, we'll see the exact same folder scheme here, right? So VSCode, test.py, no problem. Okay. Now, we have a simple test program. It uses argparse, which is a command line interpreter. It has a name argument that passes in a string. We have a correct argument, that's a bool with default false, Boolean flag. So what we're going to do is, first, you need to make sure that you have the proper extensions installed. So go to Extension Marketplace, type in Python. Be sure to install Python and the Python Environment Manager. This is very important. Allows you to pick different Python environments. So for example, if I go to my terminal, you'll see that it says CMD, but what Python interpreter is it using? Well, it's obviously running the activation for the Python Anaconda Activate base environment. But if we didn't have that, let's go to Python, select interpreter. By the way, I did Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P for Mac. And we have to select our interpreter. Since I have Python installed as a standalone on my machine, and also Miniconda, which also uses Python, I have to select the Miniconda, or the base one. If you have different environments installed, you can use that as well. Awesome. So when I do the new terminal, it's a CMD, Anaconda Activate base, and I'm good to go. So I can just type Python, or I can type Anaconda, right? So Python, test.py. If I try to run it, it says I need an argument that's required, name. So let's give it a name, say Diego. Let's give it a correct, and let's say true. Alright, let's give it false. And we notice that it's also printing true. Now, we're giving it false, but this if statement isn't proper. If we say equals true, will it still give us the same thing? Yes. Yes, it will. So why is that? Right? Let's debug. And let's see what's actually in this args object. So, to start debugging, let's delete this. Let's start debugging the current Python file. And we'll notice that we have the same problem as before. We need to pass a name argument. So how do we do that? So let's hit the stop button. Create a launch JSON file if you don't have one already. In the Python file, and in your configuration, you need to put a comma and hit args. And each command part has to be separated with spaces and colons. So name, I'm going to pass in Diego. Let's do correct. I could also do the little C flag as I also did. Let's pass in false. Okay. So when I run this again, you have to run debugging again. You can't, unfortunately, hit up and then hit the interpreter. Uh-oh, it seems there's a problem. What could be the issue? line 2, there's a problem. Did I type something I wasn't supposed to? Oh, I'm trying to debug the current object. I need to debug this. So we start debugging from the current file that's open to us. Awesome. Now, if we go on the side, we see these local variables and global variables. In this case, they're both the same. So we want to look at arg parse, or args actually. It says that correct is true. But why is that, even though its default is false? Well, obviously and let's see what the actual system prompts were passed in. So we import sys in a debug console. And we want to do sys.argv. And it says we're in test.py. We're looking at, we pass in name, pass in Diego, pass in correct, pass in false as a string, not as a boolean. Well, that means there's obviously something wrong with this argument. So let's go to Google and then say argparse pass in boolean parameter. Okay. Guy clearly says if I type this, the code does not do what I want because it evaluates to true even when I change it to that. Well, turns out we need this action to store false instead. So let's do it. Let's get rid of the type bool. Let's get rid of the default false action store false and do that instead. Now what happens? So let's stop. Run the terminal again. By the way, as soon as you stop debugging, this console loses all functionality. So you can't type in anything. Okay. Sorry, let's not open up a new terminal. Start debugging again at the same breakpoint. Uh-oh, there's an issue. Unrecognized argument, false. Alright, so what does that mean? So how do we actually pass in the argument? There's another one here. Now when you use the switch, false is stored. Otherwise, the default is true. So, in other words, I don't need to pass in the false command anymore. In other words, if I use this argument, it's always going to be if I use this argument, it's going to be false. Let's store true because I don't want that to be a default. Okay. Let's do that. All right. Now let's go back to our Explorer, VSCode, launch.json. Okay. Now, if I type in pass in these arguments, according to that, this should not work, right? It should not print anything. Start debugging. Okay, let's see what the args are. Correct is now false. And if we try to go forward, it'll completely skip it if you don't have anything working. Let's try it again, though, with the correct flag passed in. Correct. Awesome. One more time. Since we use the correct flag, it's going to store as true, and we get the intended behavior. Awesome. And that's how you debug in Python with Anaconda. The key takeaway here points are that you have to open up your Anaconda prompt and open VS Code directly from that. Otherwise, you will get some issues with every time you open up a new interpreter or a new terminal, this command won't run. it won't automatically run the activate. It won't automatically activate your Conda environment. You might get some issues with PowerShell saying that, oh, Conda is not found, right? So if I do Conda, it's possible that it's not going to be recognized because it's not in my path environment. So to avoid messing with that, this is the easiest way to do it. Open up Anaconda prompt. I'm not sure if you can actually do that from the regular CMD. So if I go to this directory, type in CMD, and then type in Conda. See, it's still not recognized there because it's not part of my path. Luckily for you, Miniconda works directly, is its own interpreter with Python installed. So if I just type in Python, it will actually work. Exit. If I type in Conda, it will work, right? It's recognized there. So it's stored here, which means we need VSCode to be able to talk to that. Okay? Awesome.